Yeah, I wanted to make a quick video about search warrants, something that I've seen asked a little bit on Twitter recently, and I've been asked about it, specifically about if a search warrant allows for officers or FBI agents to question you, and it does not. That's the biggest thing I want to relay. A search warrant is a court order that a magistrate or judge issues to authorize law enforcement to conduct a search of a person, location, or vehicle for evidence of a crime and to confiscate any evidence that they do find, which could include confiscating the item itself, like a phone, because that is considered evidence, or it contains evidence that will need to be extracted at a later time. So, that's how warrants work. That's the basis for them. There's arrest warrants, there's search warrants. The questions on the internet basically led to this. If the FBI shows up at your door, your mom's or your friends, just to chat, get their business cards, and then don't speak to them without first seeking the advice of counsel, who will ideally reach out and arrange mutual convenient time and preparation. You're welcome. I completely agree. Also, important to note, the FBI does not record interviews and interrogations. Police department will. They'll require that you have body cameras. Typically, they'll have cameras on cruisers, back seat. They'll absolutely record every single interview and interrogation at the police department. And the FBI has no such rules in place. So they can decide if anything that you said fits into their narrative, and they can write it down at a later time sometimes. It could be days later, it could be weeks later. They're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to write it very quickly. But imagine that, a couple weeks ago I interviewed that guy. I'm pretty sure he said this. Let me write that down. No way to refute it in court. It's all your word against theirs. I think talking to the FBI is a huge mistake. I'm more along the lines of like cooperating with law enforcement and talking to law enforcement. Obviously, unless you're a suspect in a case, you should shut your pie hole. But know that the FBI is just completely out there on their rules and what's required of them. I find that disgusting, actually. It goes against everything that we understand about justice. Their conviction rate in court is way too high for it to be considered fair. And this went on. Somebody asked about Mike Lindell's phone. They were executing a search warrant. You should ask to review the warrant, and regardless, cooperate with the search warrant. Then call a lawyer and get going on contesting any aspects of the search warrant that might be unlawful. And of course, I added to this. People are asking about it being compelled to speak if the person has a search warrant. First, let's say they have a warrant to take your phone. Do you have to talk to them about what's on your phone and all that? No, you don't. One of the most important aspects of law enforcement is the warrant. The judge must approve a warrant. An officer must swear to the items and stuff in it, and stipulated under the Fourth Amendment. But there are situations where a search is allowed, an arrest is allowed without a warrant. I don't have to go to a judge every time when I arrest someone to say, hey, is it okay if I arrest this guy? I don't have to read them their rights. Maybe I saw them commit a crime or I have everything I need. I'm not asking them any questions. I don't have to tell them they have the right to remain silent. Maybe they're sitting there talking and confessing, and I'm not asking them anything. Can I use that information? Certainly. I didn't ask the question that got them to speak. They were just talking about it. That's cases where people think, well, you didn't read me my rights. I'm free to go now. It's not the way it works. Consent can warrant a reasonable search. Yes. Come on in. I'm a roommate with somebody else, and I say, oh, no, he's not here right now, but hey, come on in and take a look around. Do I have permission to do that? Absolutely. Is it reasonable for the officer to think that I have permission to do that? Yes, it is. Certain locations, it doesn't matter if you give consent. Vehicles can be moved and be driven off, and evidence can be destroyed. There's also what's known as exigent circumstances. Take the word exigent, switch the word emergency in there. It's an emergency situation. I don't go and get a warrant if I hear someone screaming for help to go on someone's property. Their property rights, me being there, is not as important at that point in time as someone that may need help. But is that to say do you have to let police in your home in every case? No. They call it for loud music. Do you have to let them in your home to see where the loud music's coming from? No. You can stand and talk with them on the porch. If they're not arresting you for any crime, they're there to investigate something. You do not have to invite them into the house. If they have a reason to arrest you, they're going to arrest you. If they have a reason to search, they're going to say, hey, here's a search warrant. Those are two different things. Consent and a warrant are two different things. And a lot of times officers ask people, do you mind if I look in your car? Do you mind if I search this? There's other circumstances where I can pat a person down. Terry versus Ohio. I'm out late at night and I'm with some guy. I think he's out here doing up to no good. He might have a weapon on him. Can I search and make sure, go in his pockets and stuff? No, but I can pat him down reasonably to see if there's a gun, a knife, something like that could harm me. People place too much on their, I didn't do this, or you don't have a right to do this. And you should cooperate with police. And they should also limit their search. A warrant's supposed to be very specific. A warrant will say, if I'm looking for a stolen TV, it'll give me permission to look at a certain place for a stolen TV. But if it's a 50-inch widescreen, I can't be in your drawers inside of your bathroom looking for that TV because it won't fit in there. So it would make sense for me to be in the jewelry box on your nightstand. So a warrant gives permission, but it has strict guidelines of what I'm looking for and where I can look. So people place too much on their interpretation, and that sometimes is a bad idea. But if someone's in control at that place and gives us permission to enter, and it's reasonable for us to think that they have control over it, that can happen. If I'm walking in the public and I see something, it's plain view. I'm walking between two houses. I'm walking on the sidewalk and I see in your backyard you're growing marijuana plants, assuming it's illegal where you're at. You've violated the law. I don't need a search warrant. I can see it. You call me in your house for something else that occurred, and I see your meth lab sitting on the kitchen counter. I don't need to go get a warrant to do that. I could go get a warrant to come back and search even better. Search after arrest. I arrest someone at your place. Can I search in your couch for maybe something they hid in there, weapons that are in there? Yeah, I can do that. I can search the person that I arrested. I can search them completely. It's like, well, you can't search me. You might be arresting me, but I don't give you permission to search me. That's not how that works. And warrants can be invalidated. An officer must swear to the info, and it can't contain any falsehoods or recklessly contain any falsehoods. And that sometimes does happen. And they sometimes go out of bounds. And you got to be watching for that because that's improper. Your vehicle, if your vehicle's towed, of course it's going to be inventoried. I'm going to search it. I'm going to make a log of all the things that are in it. If I find a diamond ring in the glove box, I'm going to try to get that back to you to make sure you know that it's not staying with the car and it's at risk of being stolen. And those kind of things happen, and there's requirements for vehicles. It's a little bit more important to know that we've got to go a little bit further to protect your property and search your property to make sure that everything's accounted for so that the tow company doesn't empty out all your belongings and it all goes missing. And no one has any responsibility of like, well, you had your car towed because you're arrested and there's nothing you could do about it. There's nothing we could do about it. We didn't know what was in there. It doesn't make sense. We have to inventory vehicles. So there's a whole bunch of things around searches. It's not always clear cut, but I would say cooperate. When it comes to the FBI, I would say don't cooperate. Nothing speaks more than volumes than they have a super high conviction rate in federal courts, and that just shows that the system is unfair, where they can say whatever, you said this, you said that, and it's not recorded and it's not contestable in court because it's these agents' word against yours, and they're trusted by the court over the average person. In regular law enforcement, you don't have that. Most stuff's videotaped, conversations, at least the audio is recorded. Pretty important difference. So protect yourself. If you have any more questions, I'll try to answer them. Thought I'd make you aware of this. A warrant does not mean you have to talk to the police. Understand that. Nothing compels you to speak. You can go through your entire court trial and everything else like that and have not said a word. And that's your right. So, thanks for watching.